Hey, football fans, the Big D is back and bringing in a special guest, Neil Orfield, as we discuss Super Bowl showdown strategy. How are we going to win $1 million this evening? So, Neil, just wondering, 5 million, million the first. How are we going to win the Million Maker this weekend?
You're gonna have to tell me because I don't know. This is a tough one. You gotta get the right captain in there, and I haven't figured out exactly the right player structure yet. So I was hoping that I was gonna come on here and you were gonna tell me who I got to play a captain, who I got to fill in the rest for me.
Well, I mean, if anybody has played daily fantasy, whether it be the main slate or showdown, there's all kinds of price at stake. What's the difference between lineup construction wise between a regular main slate and a showdown slate?
I mean, a regular main slate is obviously is a completely different contest because the showdown slate you have the MVP multiplier. You only have 6 spots total as opposed to a main slate you have 9, I believe, for NFL on DraftKings. So it's obviously it's a very different game. Playing showdown versus main slates with the multiplier spot and the fewer spots overall.
Yeah, and also the captain costs 1.5 times its salary, but gets 1.5 times points. So
Yeah.
take
And
a
it's positionless too. So I guess they're positionless and also defense is kicker. So I guess there's defense on the main slate too, but a lot of differences really.
yeah, some. I mean, with 50 grand, I mean, what's your strategy when it comes to money on the table? Because generally on main slates, we don't like to leave money on the table, but how much is too much for a showdown slate?
It really varies depending on the slate. There are some showdown slates where I'd be okay leaving $10,000 on the table. This is not one of those slates. I think if you're leaving like 3,000, that's probably too much. It might be possible. I haven't, tried to play around with like a lineup that I think is viable, leaving the most amount on. But this is one where the pricing is a little bit tight. So I think it'll be tough to leave a ton of salary on the table, but I'll probably force leaving at least like 600 on the table.
Yeah, so thinking would a lineup costing totaling 48,600 be crazy?
Not at all. I'll have plenty of those. I played around with some lineups, and I think I had a lineup that I thought looked viable that left even more than that on the table. So I think that's totally fine.
Do you start your lineup captain and go everywhere else, or do you just or how do you or utility then captain?
Yeah, I mean, the honest answer is I use an optimizer, so I don't usually have to make that decision. The optimizer makes it for me.
So
But
do I.
yeah, when I am handbuilding, I start with the captain spot. I think just kind of like it kind of dictates the rest of your lineup to some extent, knowing who you have at captain. If you want to play a quarterback at captain, that's going to lead you to different players in the flex than if you have a running back at captain. So I typically start with who do I think is a viable captain, has some chance of putting up a huge score, and then I go from there.
Yeah, and it also varies from slate to slate because if you know, let's just say Matthew Stafford's one of the quarterbacks, he's going off of zippity doo dah running, but you have Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, those guys off the dual threat ability.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you have Matthew Stafford is the perfect example of if you have Matthew Stafford a captain, you're going to want to have multiple pass catchers in the flex. If you have Jalen Hurts, you don't need to. You can, and I think it's kind of a sharp way to build is still to build with multiple pass catchers in the flex. But he could also just score on 2 brotherly shoves, and that's how he puts up his points, and nobody else comes along with him. So yeah, definitely different animals.
Yeah, I remember Jalen Hurts having 3 rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Did he have 3? Man,
And I bet you I know what the play call was on all three.
I bet I could name it also.
Yeah. So honestly, do you look back at the Super Bowl 2 years ago and think what worked then could work now? Or is it just a totally different game?
I haven't looked at what happened in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I don't intend to. It's different players, different game. Obviously, what worked then could work now. It could be the same thing, but we have different players on these teams than we had 2 years ago. I wouldn't expect the exact same that we saw 2 years ago. I think I'll let other people box score watch and just try to play exactly what worked 2 years ago, and I'm gonna play this like it's its own brand new slate.
How do you divvy up captain ownership, particularly with the quarterbacks? Because I mean, if you're doing one lineup, it's one thing, but if you're doing 150, how much is too much for Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes?
So I typically on most slates, and I think this will be one of those slates, I set my max cap for captain at 20%. So I have no more than 20% of any player, which means I'm going to have at least 5 different captains represented in my lineups. Typically, I have more than that. Typically, I have, up to 15. I'll have some random player who I say up to 15, maybe up to 20. I don't know the exact number, but I'll have some random players where I just have like, maybe I'll have one lineup that's a Chiefs defense captain lineup that just gets in there because you set the cap at 20%, you put a little randomness on there, and the optimizer is going to give you a good spread. On this slate, like, I don't know, I would say that there is a too much on, any given slate. Like if you wanted to play 20 lineups and you want to play Saquon as your captain in every single one of those lineups, that's fine. It's just I wouldn't be doing that if you're playing your entire bankroll on this slate. Like you have to be smart about your bankroll management and your risk tolerance. And if you're playing, if you're playing your entire bankroll on the slate, well, first of all, you shouldn't be. But even if you're playing 10% of your bankroll on the slate, I wouldn't play 10% of your bankroll and have just one captain across all of your lineups. I would want to be spreading it out, trying to win back some of your money, taking, a lot of different approaches to get to the top. So for me, I like to play it where I spread it out max 20% on most slates. I think on this slate, it'll be the same. It'll be a 20% max cap. So if I get to 20% AJ Brown, 20% Saquon Barkley, I'd be totally fine with that. As far as the quarterback specifically, I think fading Patrick Mahomes at captain is going to be one of my bigger stances on the slate. So for me, I'll be in single digits, Mahomes captain exposure. But if people want to play it the exact opposite, I have no issue with that. I think he's going a little bit over owned from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it also varies. It also varies because we've got a fade chalk. Basically, if the Eagles win, I don't know how Jalen Hurts doesn't have a big day. Then again, Saquon Barkley could run for 195 yards, but Kansas City's defense been stinging against the run. Nobody's run for 100 yards against the Chiefs since the Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs. Since the Minnesota Vikings played the Chiefs in New Orleans.
Yeah. Yep. It's I don't know. This will be a different animal, this game.
Yeah, and also I feel like if you captain quarterback, you almost I mean, it can work, but you need guys to go. You can't have any wide receiver running back go bananas. For instance, if Jalen Hurts is captain, he puts up 250 yards, one passing touchdown, it's not going to win a million. That's not going to win a GPP because chances are AJ Brown could have a big day. Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, maybe Dallas Goedert shows up, or Patrick Mahomes if he puts up those stats. Travis Kelsey, Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, or one of the running backs.
Although the counterpoint to that would be, what if he scored 3 rushing touchdowns again? I mean, it's I don't dislike having Jalen Hurts at captain. I think I actually like him better than Mahomes, just because I also think it's going to be a low scoring game. So I think touchdowns are going to be a premium. Like who are the players that are most likely to score touchdowns? I think Jalen Hurts is among those players with the tush push, and then obviously throwing touchdowns also. So yeah, I think to me, I like Hurts a little bit better than Mahomes, in part also because Mahomes is getting more ownership at captain. But to your point, I'm probably going to have more of Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. Maybe not more than Hurts for all of them, but relative to the field, I think I'm going to be more over the field on those guys at least.
How on is Pat Mahomes in the captain spot? I mean, I looked at his price tag. He's 15 grand if you want to captain him on DK, which seems fairly cheap for what Mahomes has typically done in the Super Bowl. But
Yeah, he's being projected around the industry. So first place that I look is 16% at captain,
wow,
which is
that's
this.
chalky.
Yeah, it's the second chalkiest player on the slate. He was actually that source has updated from what they had previously. Second one has him at 15% at captain, and that is, let's see, the chalkiest captain on the slate. So yeah, he's expected to be pretty highly owned around the industry.
Wow, that's great. How old is Jalen Hurts? I'm guessing in 7 or 8%.
Let's see, 13%
Okay,
and 11%. So a
wow.
little bit lighter than Mahomes, um, which I don't know. I think Hurts. He has Mahomes doesn't have like zero rushing upside. Like he will in the playoffs when they need him to. He will run a little bit more. So I don't want to like. I'm a little bit nervous about the fade because I know that he's a little bit more likely to run in a 10-yard touchdown in the playoffs in the Super Bowl than he is during the regular season. But still, Hurts is clearly like likelier than Mahomes is to run one in. So I think I have a slight preference for Hurts if I'm deciding between one of the quarterbacks at captain. How about you?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it depends. If you play, it might depend on how many lineups you're playing. If you're playing one lineup, it changes things. You're playing 20. I think having at least one Mahomes captain lineup makes sense. If you're doing 150, maybe a half dozen lineups. Is that crazy?
No, not at all. I mean, half dozen is light. I honestly, I'm fading, but like in a 150 set, if you have 15 lineups, you're still at 10%. You're still lighter than the field. So my
Yeah.
guess is I'll probably have in a 150 set, I'll probably have double digit Mahomes lineups, but it'll probably be closer to 10 as opposed to the field being at 25.
And those lineups might have special rules set in.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to be playing Mahomes at captain without any pass catchers in the flex. Like all of my Mahomes captain lineups, I'll probably require two pass catchers. It is the Super Bowl. It's a little bit more likely that he runs a little bit, so it's possible I'll only require one pass catcher in the flex. But yeah, I'm going to have Mahomes stacked
Yeah.
everywhere when I have him in the in the captain spot.
Yeah, same here. So I'm looking at these guys. Hold on. Um, hold on. Saquon Barkley is the most expensive guy at 18,000. I think we both know what Saquon Barkley's done this playoffs. The 12,000 flex, 18,000. Uh, I don't rem I'm trying to think how expensive CMC was last year,
I don't Probably similar. I don't remember the exact number.
but how much is too much Saquon?
Like overall or in the captain spot.
Well, both. Like, is Saquon like I know Saquon Barkley's been great, but you know, is this the one game where the Eagles go back to feeding Jalen Hurts, or do the Eagles need Saquon to win?
So it looks like he's projected for around 50%. Let's see if it's the same.
Yeah.
50 to 55% total ownership across flex and captain. The approach that I'm most likely to take is I'll be overweight at captain and underweight in the flex, which I don't know that that's necessarily the best approach, but I kind of see it as Saquon Barkley. I was reading, and actually, I'll pull up the article that Ryan Heath wrote for Fantasy Points. But the data came down to when teams load the box against Saquon, Like if they have 8 in the box against Saquon, he only averages 3 point something yards per carry, but his explosive run rate is still like really high. It's still like 8% or something like that. So that's runs of 15 yards or more. He does it about 8%, even with 8 in the box. Um, so I kind of think that I'll probably take the approach of being overweight in the captain, and if he happens to have a couple of those explosive runs and scores a long touchdown, I will be covered for the scenario where Saquon is just Saquon and puts up the game that you need, and goes off at captain. But also, it's possible that he does not break out multiple of those explosive runs, or that they are just like a 20-yard non-touchdown and he doesn't quite get there. So I think that the approach that I'm taking is overweight in the captain spot, underweight in the flex. Certainly dangerous to fade him. I wouldn't say that there is a number that's too high for Saquon, just because, again, coming back to your risk tolerance, if you want to put all of your eggs in the Saquon basket and you're not risking, 10% or more of your bankroll, I think that's totally reasonable. If you just want to cheer for Saquon, put all of your eggs in that basket, totally fair. Not the approach that I'm going to take. I think overall I'll probably have about 50% Saquon, and just have more of my exposure at captain.
Yeah, and also Saquon's not really a receiving back. You look at like what Christian McCaffrey did last year, and CMC's more of a receiving back, which is beneficial on DraftKings. Saquon's not. I don't know what it is, but the Eagles never throw the tailbacks.
Yeah, it's pretty uncommon, which is also like a kind of a common thing with rushing quarterbacks. Like, just less likely to check it down, because if they just need to, get a little bit, get a few yards rather than checking down, they'll just run it themselves a lot of the time, when they have that option. So yeah, you just don't see rushing quarterbacks throw to the running back quite as much. But he's still like, he had, I don't know how many receiving touchdowns he had this year, but he had some. He's certainly capable of, taking a reception to the house also.
Yeah, and then of course Jalen Hurts, 10-4 flex, 15-6 in captaincy. I mean, Hurts could do it both ways. I mean, he scored three rushing touchdowns in the game 2 years ago. I think that I don't think we worry about that knee much. I mean, it's the Super Bowl. You give it he'll play with one knee and one arm tied behind his back.
Yeah, the only concern there is if it is not fully healed. We saw them fail with the tush push in the conference championship game. Like, they kept going to it and not being able to do it, which you don't really see typically when he's got a healthy knee. So I'm like, to that extent, like, you could like worry about it, but I agree with you. Like, I don't think I'm worried about it enough to change my approach. I'm going to assume that these extra 2 weeks have been enough for him to recover. He's got all the best shots from the best doctors, to make him able to play now.
And then guy named Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes and the Super Bowls go hand in hand, right? But I mean, rushing 2 touchdowns against the Bills, but you know, is it do you take the chance that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have one of those games? I mean, he only threw for what was that, 100 yards in the Super Bowl 2 years ago against the Eagles. So what's your so we know what your stand is, but you worry about Patrick Mahomes having one of those games?
Of course. How could you not worry about Patrick Mahomes having one of those games? Yeah, he's always a threat. So fading him is always dangerous. I'm kind of making the bet on this being a lower scoring game, and the lower scoring the game is, the more viable it is to fade quarterbacks in general, because they, in low scoring games, like, quarterbacks really need touchdowns and yards to score fantasy points, which sounds obvious, but it's more true for quarterbacks than it is for receivers, tight ends, even running backs, because they'll rack up PPR points. Even the running backs, Saquon might not do much to the air, but he'll probably have a couple receptions, adding to his total. And they also just score more fantasy points per yard, On top of the every reception you get a fantasy point as a receiver, but also you get more per yard, you get more per touchdown. So if there just aren't that many touchdowns, even if he does throw for one touchdown, that's only 4 points plus whatever the yardage is, which is reduced because he's a quarterback. So for quarterbacks to have big games, typically you need it to be a higher scoring game, unless they are a running quarterback is kind of a different thing. But for a moderate running quarterback, like you kind of need a high scoring game to put up a lot of fantasy points. So I'm kind of making the bet that there's just not going to be a ton of touchdowns in this game. Maybe when they do score, it'll be Kareem Hunt instead of Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he throws one touchdown, but he's also fairly expensive, so he needs to put up a significant number of points to be in the top lineup. So yeah, I'm scared, but also I think it's something you're going to be scared regardless, right? You're going to have to fade somebody that you want to play that is going to scare you, and that's the stand that I'm choosing on this slate.
Maybe the ultimate boom or bust guy in the not just in Showdown but in regular DFS is AJ Brown because he might go 8 for 1, he might go 5 for 1, 8 for 110, or 1 for 10.
Yeah, we already saw that in these playoffs. He had a game with just one catch, if I'm remembering right. I like him though in this slate, so I'm leaning into the chaos of AJ Brown. I think that there is some chance that the Chiefs just really focus on stopping Saquon, and if the Chiefs do focus on stopping Saquon, I think AJ Brown in single coverage just absolutely eats. So I'm hopeful that the Chiefs are just we're going to stop Saquon, let you force you to throw it, see what you can do, and I think in that scenario, AJ Brown is just you're not going to be able to stop him if the focus is on Saquon.
I don't think they have. Yeah, honestly, I remember AJ Brown having a ridiculous catch on a long pass. I'm like, if Jalen Hurts is going to eat, it'll be the AJ Brown. Maybe Devontae Smith. I'm like, maybe Philly's problem is they've got too many weapons offensively because I'm like, Devontae Smith could have one of those games. I mean, he had 6 for 120 and a couple of scores against Dallas, but stopped on anything. 4 targets in each of Philly's 3 playoff games. So I'm like, I don't know, but if there's a chance that the Chiefs put if the Chiefs put trying to think Trent McDuffie maybe on AJ Brown, then maybe Devontae Smith gets that matchup. Although they could put McDuffie on Smith and double AJ Brown.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. I'm hoping that it's just that they don't really double anybody because they're just loading the box trying to stop Saquon. That's kind of the my expectation. And to read, I'm going back to that article that I referenced earlier. Ryan Heath up at Fantasy Points, and this is a free article if anybody want to check it out on the Fantasy Points website under articles. But the AJ Brown numbers. So if they do load the box, AJ Brown has averaged an absurd 3.94 yards per route run against single high looks this year, trailing only Puka Nacua. This is I'm reading Ryan Heath now. Says compared to when he faces too high, that's roughly a 77% boost to Brown's per route efficiency. On routes with 8 or more defenders in the box, Brown has averaged an even more insane 5 yards per route run, which for people who don't pay close attention to yards per route run, if you have any kind of volume and you're above 2 yards per route run, I would say you're elite. Like that's kind of a number that when I see somebody has 2 yards per route run or more, that is a very elite number. So 5 yards per route run when teams load the box, man, I'd be pretty excited if that happens.
By the way, Kansas City is 28th in the NFL in stacked box usage.
Right, but this is a different kind of animal. So
Yeah.
I'm just making the assumption that against Saquon Barkley, they typically want to take away the team's best option, and I suspect that they're going to be more afraid of Saquon Barkley than they are of the passing game.
I mean, in terms of mid value for the Eagles offense, I mean, Dallas Goedert's 8,700, 5,800 in the flex. I mean, he can have big games. I mean, 16 and 14 and 16 points a couple times. in playoff games. Honestly, I think if the Chiefs spend time focusing on the wide receivers and Saquon, I think Dallas Goedert could have easier coverage.
I mean, certainly, yeah. Like the same thing could apply where they're just like, here's the guy we're going to choose. Like you have to kind of choose who you're really focused on stopping, and maybe Dallas Goddard does kind of fall through the cracks, like you said. He's very reasonably priced. You already mentioned Devontae Smith, who like the matchup. It's the best possible matchup for slot receivers against the Chiefs. They have in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to slot receivers. I think on the entire season, and especially over the past 5 weeks, the Chiefs are super vulnerable to slot receivers. And Devonta Smith, I think in the last game ran 63% of his routes from the slot. So great matchup for Devonta Smith as kind of a tweener between like mid range and high price. And then Dallas Goddard, yeah, also looks like a great mid range price.
And for the Chiefs, Xavier Worthy is the most expensive pass catcher at 8 grand the flex, 12 grand in captain. But Philly's got a really good young secondary with Quinton Mitchell, Slay, Cooper DeJean. How do you like Xavier Worthy in this game?
I mean, he's come on so much in the second half of the season. Like he's clearly a good player who's a focal point of their offense. I do think at his price tag, I'm probably going to be a little bit light overall on my Xavier Worthy. And it terrifies me. I think that actually scares me more than Mahomes, because it can just take one play for Xavier Worthy to be somebody you know you're going to need. But he's 8,000, projecting for around 37% ownership in the flex, in the captain spot, projecting for another 9% ownership. Yeah, I'd rather not fade him, if I'm being honest, but I suspect as I'm trying to get all those Eagles into my lineups, I'll be at least a little bit light on Xavier Worthy. But yeah, he's been just awesome. They've clearly been prioritizing him more in recent weeks.
Oh, I almost forgot. How about the other tight end in this game? That number 87 guy. It's that Kelsey guy, the one who's actually playing. Uh, I don't know what to make of Kelsey because he was phenomenal against Houston. And literally, I don't know what it is, but Buffalo's got his number this year. But, this is Super Bowl. And we know Mahomes will probably look Travis Kelsey's way at least 87% of the time. What are your plans with Kelsey?
Yeah, Kelsey is a tough one. I'm with you. It's tough to figure out exactly what I want to do. Really comes down to ownership. So he's getting 9% in the captain spot. I think I'll be overweight to 9% in the captain spot, 36% in the flex. Uh, Probably light there. So I think it's another like sort of similar to Saquon, where I suspect I'll be a little bit higher in the captain spot, a little bit later in the flex. Like you said, he's a wide range of outcomes. Like there will be games where he's just there. I think there are ways that this could play out where he's targeted 14 times in this game, and just like he has 11 catches for 100 yards, and even without a touchdown, he's the guy you need. But I think there's also scenarios where he sees 4 targets and only hauls in 2 of them for 14 yards. So really wide range of outcomes for Travis Kelsey. He's clearly lost a step, in my opinion. Like I think just watching him, he does not look like the player he was even last year, but especially like 2-3 years ago. Um, I'm not sure how much it matters that he's lost a step, because he still has Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball. If they just decide to make him a focal point, like he's going to be good anyway. So I think the way I'm playing is just kind of I'll split the difference and be a little bit overweight in the captain spot. Maybe I'll get to 12% of captain and then just play 22% in the flex, and probably be a little bit light overall on Kelsey.
Yeah, that it seems like to me Kelsey's a guy where if you play him to have a big game, but you
Exactly.
don't want all your eggs in one basket with Kelsey because he could go 2 for 20 and then it's like, oh crap.
Game over. Yeah, exactly.
And then with Kansas City, Marquise Brown is 8,100 in captain, 5,400 at flex. I have no idea what to do with Marquise Brown because I thought he made some good roads look good against Pittsburgh and Houston, then nothing against Houston, and then saw 5 targets against Buffalo. I mean, I don't know. Feels it feels gross, especially because we saw more Juju. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins could always be there. I have no idea what to do with Hollywood Brown.
I'm playing him. So I think my approach to the Chiefs receivers after Worthy, I'm treating Hollywood Brown like he is the next man up for Kansas City. Like I think even though he did take a step back in that last game, and I'm pulling up their game log right now to remember exactly what the numbers are, but the route participation has been going up. So we at least have that. Like he's gone up in his games from, in week 16 he made his season debut and he ran 33% of the routes. Week 17, he ran 51% of the routes, and then they didn't play week 18. They didn't play the starters. Divisional round, though, comes up to 71% route participation, just 2 targets in that game. But then conference championship, still 68% and saw 5 targets. So I'm kind of treating him like he's their wide receiver 2 here, and he's not getting crazy high ownership. If he were, then I might say maybe I don't want to do this, but he's being projected for sub 30% ownership at just 5,400. I kind of see him as the Kansas City equivalent to Dallas Goedert to some extent. Like I kind of think they have a similar range of outcomes and kind of provide the same like sort of salary relief with a good amount of upside. So I like Hollywood Brown. I think I'm going to be, certainly north of 30%, like more than the field is playing of Hollywood Brown. I don't know exactly how much more. We'll have to wait and see, but I think he looks great. The bigger one for me, the one that I'm really struggling with, is DeAndre Hopkins, because Hopkins, he lost his role, kind of entirely. He was down to 29% routes in the conference championship. Only ran 10 total routes. Saw 2 targets in that game, which I think it just kind of caught me off guard. I thought he was going to be coming on more in the playoffs. They're going to start leaning on him more, but instead it's been Hollywood Brown came back, and he's the guy that they trust. So I'm struggling there because he's also getting like pretty low ownership, which is intriguing. He's only, what is he, 40?
44.
Yeah,
44.
4,400. He's being, let's see, 7.5% ownership, or 7.5, 8% ownership. Like I think I'm going to be overweight there. I think that's probably where I'm going to land. Is I want to be double the field on DeAndre Hopkins and just hope that, hey, they trust him in the end zone. Like maybe he doesn't have the stamina to play as much as he once did, but like still kind of a wily vet, like the kind of guy they could use in the end zone. And again, I think touchdowns are at a premium in what I expect to be a low scoring game. So I suspect I go overweight there.
A little like Antonio Brown against the Chiefs in Tampa.
Is that right? I'm trying to remember that game. That sounds right, but I don't remember exactly how that game went.
Yeah. I think the biggest quandary could be who's going to lead the Chiefs' backfield, because we saw Kareem Hunt. We saw Kareem Hunt have a fairly big role in the championship game. 17 carries, rushing touchdown. I think he's got 4 straight games for rushing touch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's the pretty clear leader of the Chiefs backfield. Like I would be surprised at this point if Pacheco, like if they've just been waiting and they're gonna unleash Pacheco.
I don't think Isaiah Pacheco's been right since he's come back.
He hasn't, and I don't think he's going to be. Like I don't think he's that we should expect it. I think he had the same injury as Tony Pollard, that where like Tony Pollard went from electric to that down year where he was just like not really good for an entire season, and then it took him another year before Tony Pollard started being good. So I think we have a little bit of time before Pacheco's going to be right again. So I think they seem to trust Hunt more. They gave him 17 carries in that last game. So I kind of think Hunt is just kind of the leader of this backfield and going a little bit overlooked for somebody who, like you said, has been scoring touchdowns pretty consistently. He's not that expensive, 6,400 projected for 24% ownership. Let's see. Yeah, so sub 25% ownership as the starting running back on the favored team at 6,400. I think that he looks like a really strong play. I think I'm going to be overweight to Hunt. Um, and I wanted to you brought up Juju Smith-Schuster getting more routes. I did want to also say before we move on from receivers, big fan of Juju Smith-Schuster this week. Like he's not projected for a ton of ownership. And you just look at the game log that he was running 55% of the routes or so last week, 56% in the conference championship, saw 3 targets. So if he matches that, like he's kind of a slam dunk at a reduced price tag, where nobody's really playing him.
Yeah, and now we get to the guys where you probably have to play him, but you probably don't want to play him. Be the kickers. I don't know. I mean, I don't really. I mean, Jake Elliott this year has not been great from long kicks, and Butker. I mean, he's got the what seemingly miss automatic from 50 plus and from in the playoffs. I mean, what's your strategy with kickers and defenses?
Kickers and defenses, I'm basically trying to match the field. I think like I shoot for, and this is the case on a majority of slates, and I think this is probably one of those slates. I'm probably shooting for 18% each of the kickers or so. Like it would be kind of my hope is that that's around where I get, and then the defenses. I mean, 12%. Maybe I want a little bit more of the Chiefs just because I think that there are more scenarios where Jalen Hurts just is forced to throw and is not able to. Like I don't think he is the same level of Superman that Patrick Mahomes is, where it's just like he's cool under pressure. Like I think Jalen Hurts at times can fold under pressure at times. So I think maybe the Chiefs will take somewhat of an overweight approach. Let's see, they're 4,000. Yeah, but 15% ownership. That seems kind of fair to me. Um, yeah, I don't have a great take for kickers and defenses. Looks like they're all projected for around 15% ownership. That feels about right. I think I'd rather be a little bit overweight on the kickers and just kind of be right there with the field on the defenses most likely.
I think I just take what the optimizer gives me. If I'm doing 20 lineups and they give me, 2 Harrison Butlers and 1 Jake Elliott, I'm like, okay, if I have 2 Eagle defenses and 1 cheap defense, I'm okay with it. I'm like, and honestly, I like the Eagles defense more. I mean, Kansas City's O line isn't necessarily great, particularly with Toomey now at tackle. And assuming Jalen Carter's illness is behind him, I don't know about you, but Jalen Carter might be the scariest defensive lineman in football. He single-handedly won the Eagles the division round with the last 2 plays against Stafford.
Yeah, he's great. I agree with you. Strong defense. Um, I just it's going to require some takeaways, and I don't know. Like the Chiefs just don't give up too many takeaways. Is my one concern with the Eagles defense. They could still have 4 sacks. So maybe they can get there anyway. But the bigger takeaway, and I am expecting a lower scoring game, so they can get some points for just not allowing that many points. So I don't hate it. But just Mahomes just does not give up a ton of takeaways. So I'm not going to go too hard in on the Eagles defense.
Yeah, neither am I. I mean, like if you're doing 150 and having like if you do 150 and have 12, 12, I think that'd be enough. Like that might, yeah. If you do 150 and have 12 of anyone, I think that's more than satisfying, right?
Yeah, I think I'd be fine with something like that. Yeah.
Any other scrubs? I mean, maybe Justin Watson. I mean, it is showdown. I mean, Justin Watson could score a touchdown.
It could happen. Yes, he's certainly viable. I'll probably turn most of my Justin Watson shares into Juju Smith-Schuster just because he's been running so many more routes and the ownership isn't that crazy. I think of the scrubs, I think the one that I'm going to get to the most is Samaje Perine. Like I just think there are more scenarios where Samaje Perine scores a random touchdown, and he's also only 1,200. So I think he is after Juju Smith-Schuster. I think Samaje Perine is my favorite spend down.
Yeah, I don't think Samaje Perine a bad one. Just fade both of Kansas City's other backs, play Perine, or maybe
Safe.
who's I mean Noah Gray, but he hasn't really been great lately. Dotson, no, he doesn't excite me. I mean, maybe Johnny Wilson. I mean, here's the bare minimum if he caught a touchdown pass.
Sure. Yeah,
I mean,
seems viable. Let's see. In the conference championship, I'll just read off some of the routes. So Xavier Worthy ran 88% of the routes, led the Chiefs. Travis Kelsey 82%, and then from there it's Marquise Brown 68%, Juju Smith-Schuster 56%. Noah Gray is actually down to DeAndre Hopkins played more than him 29%. Noah Gray down to 18% in the conference championship. So for a while he was up at like 40% route participation, only ran 6 routes in the conference championship. Justin Watson only ran 3 routes in the conference championship. Peyton Hendershot ran 2. So the on the Chiefs in particular, the weaker options like just don't really stand out. They're harder to predict. But if any of them scores a touchdown, obviously they're going to look pretty strong. And then on the Eagles side, you had Devontae Smith ran 87% of the routes in the conference championship, AJ Brown 81%, Dallas Goedert 77%, and then a big drop down to Jahan Dotson at 52%. Of course, saw 0 targets in that game. Johnny Wilson ran 13%, just 4 total routes, didn't see a target. Grant Calcaterra just 2 total routes, didn't see a target. So it's pretty condensed on the Eagles side of things. I guess Jahan Dotson is like he runs more than 50% of the routes. I guess you can hope for a touchdown. Didn't really do much all year, but seems viable for a showdown.
yeah, and we're not talking. And by the way, we're not talking about doing 150. Just putting Dotson here or there and hope he somehow catches a random touchdown, which is always bound to happen in showdown.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so now we get to the fun part. Not showdown lineup strategy, but maybe showdown contest entry strategy, and they're all a multitude of contests or something to enter. Excuse me. The Millie Maker, 5 million a top, $20 an entry, million the first. First, they're all what is it? 294,000 entries. So what's the? I mean, and then the Mega Millionaire, which is 3 million, 44 million the first, 750 entries, $147. Oh gosh, I'm like, how the heck can you enter that contest? You need like the biggest bankroll in North America.
There'll be people who max that contest out.
I
So
and
I will not be
I
one of
think
them.
and I think I know a couple people who might be entering them. I'll give you a nickname for GPP and MMEs. Maybe Mr. Awesome will be maxing that.
I don't know if he will. Like he would have a couple of years ago. I think Alex has played a little bit lesser volume these days. Maybe he's still playing. I don't know. For NFL, he might still be playing that high volume. But I think he's not as sure of a thing as he once was to enter those. But guys like McLovin, Utica, those guys I think are Chipotle Addict, Big Papa Gates. I think those guys are pretty likely to max it out, or
And
at
then
least have several entries.
the Wildcats 333, 1.25 million, quarter million the first. The play actions 100K the first, $10. Obviously I'm guessing you're gonna max the Millie Maker, but what other contests are you leaning to entering?
Oh, I won't. I'm not maxing the main Millie Maker anymore.
Okay, okay.
I'll probably have 10 entries in that one. No, I've
Okay.
cut back pretty considerably over the past year or two since the Sims have taken over. I'm like I don't really want to keep throwing thousands of dollars at it. So I'll probably have 10 to 20
Yeah.
in the Millie Maker. But I'm these days, and the other thing that has happened to me is they have widened the contests that I can play. For a while, I couldn't play anything that was $3 or less because I had too many entries. But I think I stopped playing quite the same volume and have re-entered the territory where I can max out the mini max. So I've been just the past couple months, I've been maxing out the mini max, the 50 cent entry, 356,000 entries in the contest in total. So I'll have 150 in that one. I like to max out the $3.20 max. Those are the ones that I'm more likely to actually max out, and then I'll just have some in the $20 milli. Certainly
Well,
not playing the 44.
I sure as hell won't be doing that either. So you're gonna max the play action 20 max?
Yep, exactly.
I I kind of honestly, I don't want to play the crapshoot of Millie Maker. I mean, I may throw one in there just to see what the heck happens, but I like the 20 max because we're not competing up against 8,000 people. I really like the single entry, whether it be the 100K single entry. I think that's a 50K. There's more a 40K. I mean, I like the three maxes too because you can have variations of lineups. And I remember last year, I think it was for that Saints Rams Thursday night game. I played a single entry and like 50x my winnings. So I'm like, dang. And I mean, sure, it
Fun.
wasn't Millie Maker, but 50x my entry, right?
Yeah, 50x is not a common thing.
No, no, and I mean, if you have, and I also think it's harder to play because everybody's got sims, everybody's got optimizers, whether it be Fantasy Labs, Rotor Grinders, Stochastic, the one you're doing until 555 or whenever.
Well, that's the rotor grinders typically. For Showdown, I'm running the rotor grinders lineup HQ. But yeah, I mean you've got so many different products.
Yeah, and also I mean, contest selection to me is almost, if not more important, because you know what you're doing. Like, I don't think like you don't put your cash lineup in a millie maker, and you don't put your millie maker into a cash lineup.
Yeah, I mean that is absolutely true. Playing the lineups for the contest that you're entering. I mean, I like when I'm talking about leaving at least $600 on the table. That's because I'm playing the large field stuff where I'm trying to avoid a lot of dupes. If you're playing the 44, then you probably don't need to be leaving that much salary on the table, or similarly size contests.
I mean, but for a single entry, you also don't have to get quite as fancy. You don't need the nuts. You just need the half nuts.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, you can get away with just having a good solid lineup that puts up more than the other entries in your contest, which if it's only 750 in the contest, that's a lot easier to beat a field of that size than when you're playing against 300,000. You really need the nuts.
Why single entries are better. First place, yeah, you don't win as much, but 100K single entry, it's 15K the first, 10th is 500K. I think the three max is even better. And let me see the 20K nickel. Yeah, 10th place is first place is 200. Excuse me, first place 2,000, 10th place is 200, and then oh, it's easier. I think it's far easier to maybe not win, but at least feel like you've got a chance at getting a decent OI.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's in a lot of these contests, like in the Millie Maker, more or less, if you're not first or like top five, depending on how duped the lineups are, you're probably losing money, especially if you're maxing it out. So yeah, it's some of these contests you don't have the same upside, but you're a lot more likely to hit a 50x score. I mean, even that is more likely in some of these other contests than it is in like the Millie Maker. Like it's pretty rare to 50x your entry. You're either like 1,000xing or you are losing money most of the time in the Millie Maker contest.
Yeah, and And also in the single entries, we've got a better chance of not having a dupe lineup. I mean, there will be dupes. I mean, but Millie Maker. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you've played Showdown more than me. How many Millie Maker lineups have been duped?
The vast majority of them. Yeah, it's I mean,
I mean, what's the one where you've seen like the most duped lineup?
oh, I don't even know. I think there have been some that have been duped 1,000 times in a Millie Maker
No.
contest. Like, I think they can get pretty out of hand. Yeah.
Yeah, you imagine 1,200 people, 1,200 people having the same lineup, and I'm like, yeah, you should have played in a catch then.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. That is not the lineup you want to play in the Millie Maker or some other large field tournament.
I mean, I'm trying to think what could be the most duped lineup this year.
For this Super Bowl, I mean,
Yeah,
let's see. I bet I could tell you. Let's see.
let me see if I can take a wild guess at it. You don't tell me I'm gonna. Is it Jalen Hurts captain or Saquon?
Neither.
Mahomes.
Mahomes captain.
And then I'm guessing Hurts and Saquon.
I'm debating whether the first one I'm looking at, like I'm looking at some of the top lineups and debating which one will be. Um, I don't think Saquon will be in the most duped lineup.
Okay, so it'd be Hurts.
Yep.
Um, Kelsey?
Nope.
AJ Brown.
Nope.
Xavier Worthy?
I think Xavier Worthy will be in there.
Dallas Goddard.
Yep.
Wait, hold on. So how much do I have left?
Uh, you have 10,800, I believe.
Hmm. Hollywood,
Yep.
and then I think I have enough for Butker.
Yep. I think
Wow.
that will most likely be the most duped lineup. I'm testing. I want to run a different optimizer with different projections, but I suspect that's going to be, yeah, that one looks like it's the front runner, I would say, for being the most duped.
Yeah.
Which leaves 400 on the table. So maybe not. Maybe there's somebody where you can upgrade. Is there somebody else you can put in instead of Butker? I wonder if it would be that same lineup where you
You could put
used.
you could put Kelsey and Juju.
Yeah, that might be. I don't. It kind of. I'm not sure what to make of Juju. Like how much ownership he'll get. You can put Pacheco in there instead of Butker, but I think the Butker one probably gets more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's no like super obvious. Like that one is not the most like clearly obvious. That one is. I can see that one like just looking at it, looking at how it projects, and then the players in. It's like, yeah, that's probably going to be the most dupe lineup most likely. But I don't think it's going to be a 1,000-way dupe like you'll sometimes see. I think it'll be duped a lot, but probably 100.
Yeah,
Maybe I don't really know.
it'd be weird fading fake one for the most duped lineup, but that would be a huge Kansas City stack. That would be 5-1. What a
No, that one
oh,
is
4-2, 4-2, excuse me. I was thinking
yeah.
Hurts and Dallas Goddard. I mean, it's not the
Yeah. Yeah, that one it makes sense as as a lineup that will be super dupe. I don't know if it'll be the most dupe, but makes sense just because it's constructed well. Like it has Mahomes in the captain spot, and he's the chalkiest or second chalkiest captain, depending where you look. He's double stacked as you would want. You've got Hurts in there with Goddard, so like it just makes sense in a lot of ways to be super duped.
yeah. feel like everybody's going to want to play Mahomes because we do get a lot of newbies for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they're all going to want Mahomes. Most are going to want either Hurts or Saquon, I think.
And you know what? And you know what we'll do? I may set a rule where I I may set a rule in single entry where I'm not playing a Mahomes or Jalen Hurts captaincy. I'm going with one of the wide receivers.
Yeah, I think the receivers, some of my favorites. I mean, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, both look awesome. Go with one of the Chiefs, Hollywood.
Yeah, Hollywood, Kelsey. I mean, just as long as we bring home the bacon, right? It'd be funny the Sunday night after all clean, the confetti, the Superdome, if one of us won the Millie Maker, one of us won like a big single entry.
That's the dream. Let's take it down.
I'll take it down and then go party on Bourbon doing Mardi Gras next week.
That's right. Yeah, never been to Bourbon Street.
Neither. My mom's been to New Orleans back in the day, but not me.
Well, actually, if that counts, when I was a baby, technically I have been there. I'm told that my parents took me when I was a baby, and that people loved me in New Orleans when I was a baby. But I don't have any memories of that.
Did your mom give you a beignet or croissant? Do you even remember that?
I don't remember a single thing. It might have been one of their different children. Might have been one of my brothers, and they just tell me the story. And I believe they called me a fat baby too. But maybe I'm conflating my stories because I don't think I was that fat as a baby. I was pretty mid-sized, I think. So maybe I'm misremembering.
No chubby cheeks for you?
Yeah. Not really. I was not the adorable chubby cheek baby. Just an average cheek baby.
Yeah, I was just thinking. Yeah, actually, my my nephew's nickname used to be Chubby Cheese.
It's a good nickname for a baby.
All right, Neil. Thanks for hopping on to give us your Super Bowl showdown advice. We'll be sweating it out all night this Super Bowl Sunday.
Thanks for having me.